Every day you look at a map on your phone, in classrooms, in textbooks. You think you're seeing the world, but what if you're not? What if the world you've been shown has been carefully framed to shape your view of reality? We're not just talking about maps, we're talking about perception and who controls it. Let's get into it. This is the standard world map, the Mercator Projection. The first version of this map came out in 1569, created by Flemish cartographer Reis Mercator. He introduced this projection that would later dominate the world for centuries. Sailors could chart a straight line across oceans, and it was perfect for empires expanding into Africa, Asia, and the Americas, but it distorted reality. The entire northern hemisphere became much bigger. Greenland ballooned. Europe looked dominant. Africa shrank. In truth, Africa is about 14 times larger than Greenland, but on a Mercator map, they look similar in size, maybe just 2 times bigger. And Antarctica, sliced off, minimized, barely visible, out of sight, out of mind. For over 400 years, this projection has shaped how humanity has visualized the planet, and perception shapes power. In 1855, Scottish clergyman James Gall introduced a world map projection designed to show the true proportional size of continents. More than a century later, in 1973, German historian Arno Peters brought the same concept back into the global spotlight. Together, their work became known as the Gall-Peters projection. Unlike the familiar Mercator projection, the Gall-Peters projection preserves land area. That means Africa appears massive, as it truly is. South America stretches tall, and Europe shrinks to a more realistic scale. The shapes may look unusual to eyes trained on Mercator, but the proportions tell a very different story about the world. The Gall-Peters projection doesn't exaggerate the regions near the poles or quietly inflate Europe's visual dominance. Instead, it forces the viewer to confront the real balance of land on Earth. And yet, this version of the world never became the one on your classroom wall, because the projection you see again and again programs the way you visualize the planet. Over time, distortion stops looking like distortion. It starts to feel normal. And when something feels normal long enough, it becomes your subconscious worldview. Before Mercator and Peters, there were maps that suggested older knowledge and secrets we have forgotten. If you're interested in learning more about ancient maps, I strongly suggest checking out Charles Hapgood's book, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings, which brings us to the Piri Reis map of 1513, seen here on the cover. Created by Ottoman Admiral Piri Reis, it drew from older source maps, some centuries old. It shows South America with surprising accuracy and the southern landmass of Antarctica long before its official discovery in 1820. For a detailed review of the Piri Reis map, please check out my Piri Reis map episode. I bought this world map when I was in Canada. I thought it wouldn't be influenced by mainland China, but I was wrong. I later discovered that roughly 80% of the world's maps, no matter which country they're made for, are printed in China, except Taiwan, of course. The Chinese flag was placed right at the top center. the most prominent position in design. The Taiwan flag wasn't even shown at all until I replaced it. Even small design choices, like which flag is most prominent, can influence how people perceive importance and authority. Now look at this map, made for domestic use in mainland China. The South China Sea shows the 9-dash line marking disputed territories as Chinese. Taiwan is labeled as a province of China. Maps like these reflect the official territorial perspective used within mainland China. Every detail reinforces the idea that Taiwan belongs to China for anyone viewing it inside the PRC, the People's Republic of China. China. Which brings me to the sponsor of today's episode, a tool that gives a clear, unbiased view of the world, even the top of the world that is usually hidden on most globes. This MOVA globe spins continuously and shows the world as it really is. I love this MOVA globe. First, it's just really cool. Second, it's manufactured in Taiwan. But most importantly, it presents the world without those political additions. No 9-dash line, no manipulated borders. Plus, no batteries, no wires. And it spins continuously using only light. You can even get custom designs. Maybe we could create our very own Hyperborea North Pole version in the future. If that's something you'd be interested in, you can let me know in the comments or message me directly on the White Rabbit 4090 Facebook page. And if you'd like to have a globe of your own, you can scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the video description using the code TWR4090 to get 10% off any model. There are dozens of options to choose from. Repeatedly, history seems to push Antarctica to the margins of our maps. Sometimes it's just a thin sliver of land, like on my Canadian world map, or tucked away in the southern projection where few people look. It makes you wonder, is there something about Antarctica they'd rather you not notice? You don't have to take my word for it. Consider Admiral Richard E. Byrd that I introduced in the Admiral Richard E. Byrd Introduction and Secret Diary episode, one of the most celebrated naval explorers in American history. In his 1954 interview, he spoke about the lands beyond the Antarctic frontier. He said, and I quote, "There's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being, and that's beyond the pole, on the other side of the South Pole." Was he talking about more of Antarctica or the outer continents beyond Antarctica? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
I must say that Admiral Byrd, our guest tonight, is not only our greatest living explorer, but he's been an inspiration to countless Americans. Admiral Byrd, you've been to both the North Pole and the South Pole. Is there any unexplored land left on this earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. And not up around the North Pole, because it's getting crowded up there now, because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily. But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the South Pole from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
This is a tremendous
So
challenge.
there's a lot of adventure left down at the bottom of the world.
Admiral, do you hope to see that?
I do.
Keeping Antarctica on the very edge of the map makes it feel distant, almost invisible. That's why on my map, Antarctica appears oversized. In reality, it's far closer to the truth than we've been led to believe. Look at the Gall-Peters projection here. Antarctica reveals itself as the massive continent it truly is. Long before satellites and modern maps, cartographers were already hiding secrets in plain sight. One striking example is the Orance-Fine world map of 1531. Fine, a French astronomer, mathematician, and cartographer, created the heart-shaped map that prominently features the southern continent. This idea didn't come out of nowhere. For nearly 2,000 years, geographers believed the Earth required balance. If massive continents existed in the north, logic demanded a counterweight in the south. The theory traces back to the Greek scholar Claudius Ptolemy, who argued that a great southern landmass must exist to stabilize the world. This hypothetical continent became known as Terra Australis in 150 CE, which was 1,876 years ago. Later maps would label it as Terra Australis Incognita, which means the unknown southern land. When European mapmakers began marking the southern continent as a mystery, there were already hints, often overlooked, that the southern continent may not have been entirely unknown after all. More on this soon. By the late 1500s, the southern continent appears clearly on European maps, including Orbis terrarum typus de integro multis in locis emendatus, which translates to Orb of the Earth completely amended by Dutch Petrus Flancius of 1594, where the landmass stretches boldly across the bottom of the world. It was even called Magellanica, Magellan's Land, after Ferdinand Magellan skirted the southern extremes in 1519, reinforcing the belief that something enormous lay hidden in the far south. Fine reinforced the mystery again in Nova Universi Orbis Descriptio, better known as the Orontius Phineus in Latin, in 1532, clearly depicting Hyperborea in the north and a detailed southern continent below. Similar northern mysteries appear in the famous Mercator's North Pole map, like the Pygmies. I made a full dedicated episode about it. If you haven't seen it, be sure to check it out. And earlier still, the Fra Mauro world map of 1450 quietly flips the world, putting the south at the top, defying the medieval tradition of putting Jerusalem, the spiritual center, above all else. It's just like the so-called upside down map of Australia. It isn't really upside down. It's simply another projection. Now, let's go back to the overlooked hints about Antarctica, because the Europeans weren't the only world explorers. From 1405 to 1433, Chinese Admiral Zheng He commanded massive treasure fleets across all the oceans. They made landfall in the Americas, circumnavigated Greenland, crossed the Arctic, thoroughly explored Asia, Australia, New Zealand, India, Africa, and yes, they even made it to Antarctica. For a deeper dive on the ancient treasure fleet, you can check out this book or my Canadian, Greenland, or Piri Reis episode. It is believed that some of these Chinese maps eventually reached Europe. So when Christopher Columbus sailed westward in 1492, he was already convinced that land lay across the Atlantic. He had seen maps that gave him the conviction that land lay across the Atlantic, even if it wasn't the land of spices he expected. For a full review of Columbus crossing the Atlantic, including the unusual lights and unexplained sightings he encountered along the way, you can check out my episode From Ancient UFOs to Today, a 2,000-year journey. In 1519, Ferdinand Magellan set course for the 52nd parallel, where the eastern entrance to the strait that would later bear his name was discovered. For he too navigated with knowledge drawn from earlier maps. For a full review of Magellan's voyage and the wrecked Chinese junks found at the western edge of the strait, once again, check out my Piri Reis episode. The real conspiracy isn't what maps show you, it's what they decide you see. If Europe dominates the map, if Africa is minimized, if Antarctica is pushed to the edge, your perception is shaped before you even realize it. A classroom map is more than geography. It's psychological architecture. Control the projection, control the perception, control power. A map can trick you, exaggerate, shrink, or erase what it chooses. But a MOVA globe in your hand shows the world without distortion. Perspective is yours to hold. And in that simple act, the world feels balanced and free from the rules someone else set. For over 500 years, humanity has stared at flattened versions of reality, not completely false, just carefully framed. When reality is flattened and continents are resized, perception becomes programmable. So the next time you look at a world map, ask yourself, are you seeing the Earth or someone's perception of it? And as always, I'm not saying this and every story I share is 100% true. I'm just telling a story, and you can dig deeper and believe what you want. Uncovering the truth, one conspiracy at a time. See you next week on the White Rabbit 4090.